Frozen waffles, except I would not thaw them. I would eat them frozen. Oh my god, this is gonna be juicy. Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we are going to do a little chatty time. I asked Instagram questions and I'm gonna answer them here. So if you don't follow me on Instagram, make sure you do so you can get in on this action. And if you want your question answered on the tube, follow me. Anyways, so I asked Instagram to ask me questions about hypothalamic amenorrhea, binge eating, any kind of ED questions, life, fitness, general, whatever questions that you guys have, and you definitely delivered. So I'm super stoked for this. I hope you're super stoked for this. Grab a high protein snack, sit down, relax, and enjoy this juicy, hopefully kind of spicy Q&A time with yours truly. So let's hop into the first question, shall we? First question, you have 30 minutes in the gym because you're running late. What are you doing? Me personally, please don't sue me for this, but I'll probably skip my cool down. I won't skip my warm up because that actually makes my workout better, but I will I'll get into it really quickly. And then for my workout, if I have any cardio planned, I'll probably cut that out because in the grand scheme of things, building muscle for me is a much bigger priority than getting my cardio in because I can just go for a walk if I want. But in terms of my weightlifting session, I will superset things. So that kind of goes hyper speed in that. Again, like it's not ideal if you're doing big compound movements. And this is if you're running late, you only have 30 minutes. I will superset things just to speed things along or do more of a circuit-based thing. A circuit-based workout just to make sure that I am getting in a decent amount of exercises per workout. And things like that do happen, right? So if I do run out of time and I'm like, shit, I gotta go. I gotta get, then I'm just gonna quit. In the grand scheme of things, it's not a huge deal if you miss 15 minutes of your workout. Not gonna make or break your gains, not gonna make or break your fat loss goals. It's just life and we're just living in it. This next one I'm gonna save to the end because it is a really, really good one. So if you've ever struggled with your body image in the past, you're gonna wanna stay for that one, but we're gonna skip over that. How many cycles post-HA, hypothalamic amenorrhea, did it take for you to start cycling normally? So I have a lot of clients where they get their first cycles back and their next like second and third recovery period are pretty long. And that's a very normal thing. I see that a lot. So if you are currently in period recovery and you've gotten your first period and your second one or your third one is taking a little bit longer, know that that is normal. Your body will settle in its own kind of regulated state and it's just gonna take some time. For myself, I was ranging around like the 30 to 35 day range, which is still in the healthy range when I just first got my cycle back. However, now it's in the 28 to 29, 30-ish day range, which is in a much healthier range for my own body. However, it was a little bit longer when I first started cycling again, and that is just because your body just doesn't trust you. It's likely extending your follicular phase, which is the first half of your cycle, and the luteal phase typically stays the exact same. It can hinder depending on stress levels, of course. But so for myself, it wasn't super long, but it was longer than it is now. So let your body settle into what normal means for you. This one is a really good one too. What was the first thing you did to stop binges? And this, you might not expect me to say, because it's not like take a walk or go have a bath or go distract yourself, call a friend, whatever, or journal even. The first thing that I did that was absolutely game-changing for my recovery and my relationship with food in terms of overeating was to, one, notice what was going on. I feel like we all, who's ever struggled with binges, go into this like subconscious mode where you don't know what's happening, and that's a problem. Like if you don't know what's going on, how are you expecting to fix it? So the first thing that I did was notice what was going on. And for myself, I noticed when I was in a very heightened state of emotions, probably negative emotions, but even like when I was excited, I would binge. Like it didn't really matter. It was when I was in a heightened state where I would just turn to food to regulate myself, which obviously isn't helpful. However, just noticing that one point, I like to call the point of choice where I have a decision to turn to food because that's my default, or I have a decision to use a healthier, maybe less dopamine, maybe an activity that doesn't release as much dopamine, but can release some feel-good hormones. That for myself is typically dancing. When I have a lot of pent-up emotions, or I'm in a negatively emotional state, I like to just release it. So dancing is my favorite part, or I'll go for a drive and sing in my car. Not the best singer, but those are the things that just make me happy and can just regulate my emotional state and bring me back down to a place where my conscious mind can make decent choices based on where I want to go with my life, rather than just letting my subconscious brain control my actions. How do I know if I need to get my hormones checked out? So this is a really good one, and I'm going to give you a hack, because as women, we have a very amazing thing that is a lot cheaper than getting your hormones checked, and that is called your menstrual cycle. So I know this isn't really taught in school very much, but your cycle holds so much information of your health and your health state. So for myself, or yourself, if you don't have a cycle, that is a very clear sign that your estrogen levels will be low, your progesterone levels will be low, your LH levels will be low, and your FSH levels will be low. Typically your thyroid will be low. So that is a very clear sign that there's some energy imbalance, and so your hormones are downregulated, right? And if you don't track your cycle, and you do have questions about where your hormones are at, I highly suggest you track your cycle through BBT, symptothermo method. And it's a type of birth control, but it's also very informative for yourself to know where your health is at. And what you'll do is just take your temperature in the morning, and that's your BBT, your basal body temperature. Do it before you wake up. Well, do it right after you wake up, before you go drink a glass of water, before you go to the bathroom, before you go on your phone, before you do literally anything. And what that's going to tell you is your temperature right when you wake up. And if it's low, then typically you have a thyroid or downregulated thyroid. If you're a luteal phase, so the temperature rises when you ovulate, so the latter half of your cycle is called your luteal phase. And every day you have higher temperatures, that will be a day in your luteal phase. So if it's below 10 days, your luteal phase, that means that your progesterone levels are lower. And you are more susceptible to miscarriages and things like that. So that is a very good point of reference. And if your follicular phase is decently long, or your whole cycle is long, that might mean that your stress levels are a little bit too high altogether. So track your cycle, because it is definitely a cheaper version of getting your hormones tested. But if you do get your hormones tested, it's always good to know what point in your cycle you are in, so you know what you're going to, the feedback that you're going to get, or what feedback that you are looking for. And I know that a lot of doctors don't really elaborate on this, so you do have to make sure that you are educated yourself. So highly recommend digging a little bit deeper in what results you're looking for and what you are looking for, what questions that are good to ask your doctor, because question asking is a superpower. How do you calculate protein macros? Emily and I actually did a full podcast on protein and how to calculate this, so I will link it right here. However, just to give you a bit of a summary, I typically like to do 1 gram per pound of ideal body weight, and you can crank it up if you are in a cut, because your body is at risk to losing muscle mass, which is not something that we want, right? If you're in a muscle building phase, 1 gram per pound of body weight is a good place to be, right? Because you are in a calorie surplus or at maintenance, so your body isn't going to be as catabolic as if you are in a deficit. So when you are in a deficit, or if that is your goal right now, do make sure that you are hitting your protein goals. And even more so when you enter the peri and menopausal era of your life, so important to get enough protein, not only protein in general, but good quality protein with leucine in it, which is usually animal-based proteins. and also timing it. So pre and post workout is also a very important thing. But like I said, Emily and I went really deep into it, so I'll link it here. Go watch that if this is a question that you have. The next one is, how do you tell the difference between strength gain and muscle gain? So strength is how much force you can produce, and muscle gain is how much your muscles can build and how big your muscles can be. So you can get stronger by improving neuromuscular efficiency, which means your brain gets better at activating existing muscle fibers, whereas hypertrophy, you're likely lower rep and upping the weight to a point where you're either hitting failure or 2 reps in reserve, which is growing the muscle on your body. So it's tearing and rebuilding when you are in recovery mode. So both are very important. However, it is really good to know the difference between building strength and building muscles, because a lot of people think that when you feel the burn, when you're doing like high rep, low weight is building muscle, when your body's going to hit a point where it adapts to that, and there's going to be a point where you're no longer going to build as much muscle, in which case you would have to switch to upping the weight. So no longer do high reps, low weight, to improve your muscle building and like the tone on your body. What was one of your trigger foods? Ironically, not ironically, but kind of funny, is one of my trigger foods was not what you'd expect. Cottage cheese, oatmeal, frozen waffles, except I would not thaw them. I would eat them frozen. Bread, obviously. I was obsessed with making cookies in a mug. If you've ever dealt with like binges, you know how the urgency can kind of get in your brain where you're not gonna wait for the food to cook. Like, that's not an issue. That's not happening. So I would like make a cookie, a chocolate chip cookie. Like, I'd have the ingredients for like butter, flour, sugar, and I'd make it in a mug and pop it in there, and like I'd burn my mouth on it. So cookies were a big one. Any kind of sweets were a very, very big one for me. Nachos. I don't know why, but I just like cheese on nachos. If you've ever done that when you were a kid, or like that, yeah, those are definitely the most wild ones that I definitely struggled with at some point in my life. However, no longer. Okay, now for the most juicy one that I've been saving for the end. How do you cope with the mindset around gaining weight? This is huge. I absolutely love this question. And it all comes down to your identity. So previously, when I was like the fit girl, I was lean, I was mean, I was like striations, vascularity, ironically was very uncomfortable in my own body. However, I was like the definite, everyone was complimenting on me. It's very, very hard to let go of that and accept weight gain when you're getting external validation that what you're doing is correct. So in your mind, you're like, am I regressing? Am I just becoming a lazy lump on the couch? When in reality, like, that's the best thing that you can do for your body and your health, because you are in your own lane and no one knows what's going on with your health internally except for you. So if you feel like shit and your period is missing and you struggle with your relationship with food, like, it is very likely that you're going to have to either gain weight or at least have to do some body image work for you to accept yourself at what other weight. And this goes for weight loss too, because what you've probably found if you are on a weight loss journey, or if you've ever tried to, is you get to a certain point and then you self-sabotage and you go right back to where you were, or then some. And this is because you have not changed your identity into someone who deserves or can maintain that result. Okay? So in terms of this weight gain mindset, you have to genuinely let the past version of yourself kick it. And one exercise that I did that was really helpful was I wrote a letter to my past self, like grieving her. Like, I just grieved it, and myself in my smaller body, I was like, goodbye, farewell, forever. I cried. It was a whole moment, but it was a very transformative moment in a sense where, like, you really do have to let go. And it's so hard, because if you've ever grieved somebody in your life, or a loved one, think about that like as yourself. And as I get older, And I find that happening quite a lot because I think back to like my past and my childhood even, and I'm like, wow, those times are OVER, over. And sometimes I cry about it because it's sad. It's so sad to grow up. Let yourself cry about your old body, but genuinely, like, keep in mind that you're doing this for your health, and you should always be health forward, not aesthetic forward. So as hard as it is, priorities will always prevail, right? So if it's a priority for you to get your cycle back, to start a family, to be healthy, then you'll find a way. We get really resourceful when things are important for us. So it is really important as well to just let go of the past version of yourself and recognize that we're not supposed to stay the same forever. You're not supposed to be the same person as you were when you were a teenager. You're not supposed to be the same size as you were when you were a teenager. And that is okay. And that concludes this week's video. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you have any questions, you know where to follow me on Instagram. I do question boxes every Friday just to serve you guys in the best way that I possibly can. And sometimes your question makes it on YouTube. So if you ever have any questions, go follow that. And in the meantime,